How many of you feel like the months are just passing by and it's crazy to believe that we're over a quarter of the way through the year? But this is what happens when we don't have really clear goals, targets, and tasks. This approach has really helped me manage my time better. I have big monthly goals, I have 4 weekly targets, and I have 1 daily task. The 1 daily task is the baby step towards the weekly target, and the weekly target, added up, all 4 of them, leads to the big monthly goal. So what you're doing here in essence is breaking down something that feels quite unachievable, impossible to do, and quite challenging into small, manageable chunks. Sometimes you can be sitting there thinking, wow, I don't know how I'm gonna get that done by the end of this month. If you've ever felt that way, use this model. First, come up with how can you break that big goal down into 4 separate tasks? Once you have these 4 weekly targets, now all you need to do is divide each weekly target into a daily task. So basically, you end up working on something daily that you achieve weekly, which helps you achieve something monthly. Now you've completely deconstructed this impossible, unachievable idea into something very simple and manageable.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because the thing that saved me as an entrepreneur was watching the stories of other successful entrepreneurs, and I learned from their advice, I learned from their motivation, and honestly, I have no idea where I would be if I didn't have those videos to inspire me. I still need them for myself today too, and I hope that they can inspire you as well. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Jay Shetty, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2 is find your mission.
I remember after I had my first viral video, I didn't want to make any videos.
Really? Why?
Because you're scared of success. Like you're scared of...
But weren't you excited? You're like, oh, 50 million views, like all these people.
You get, well, that's the point, right? Like at one point, it has to become about more than the success or failure. And that's where the meaningful mission, it comes back to that, right?
Yeah.
It always comes back to that. And I was talking about this with our friend, and we talked about you too. It's so funny. I was talking to Stephen Bartlett recently because I was in London, and we talked about you too because we were talking about relationships. And he was saying what he'd learned from you and the conversations you guys have had, and now I'm talking about him to you. But I was talking to him about the idea of just like getting comfortable with the idea that at one point we all have to embrace insignificance and irrelevance in a public sense, but that in an internal sense, the meaningful mission was what was carrying you.
Yes.
So if you stop because people stop following, or if you start only when people are following, then there isn't a meaningful mission. Because the meaningful mission is what you were doing, whether people were following or not, because it's what you wanted to do and who you wanted to be. And so I think it comes back to that if you only play when you're winning and you stop when you're losing, or you don't pivot and learn a new way to serve, then there isn't a meaningful mission at the bedrock of it. And so I love that the meaningful mission is at the heart of everything, because there will always be changes. Like the platforms will change, the algorithms will change.
People will come and go.
People will come and go. And you see the people that have lasted the test of time, it's usually people who have a meaningful mission, as you were saying, who want to keep serving, keep giving. They feel they have that.
Rule number 3 is learn about karma.
Rule number 2 was take a look in the karma mirror. And you started it right off because the word karma, we have this association with it, but there's a misconception about what it really means.
Yeah, I think that we have a very limited understanding of a lot of Eastern concepts and Eastern words. And I was very fortunate, having lived as a monk for 3 years. I spent a lot of time studying the Vedas and spiritual literatures that give insight and depth to these concepts and words that we now hear, like we hear kismet or karma, or all these words are thrown around in the Western world, but we don't necessarily have the most thorough understanding of the word. And so karma is often, what goes around comes around. I think there's that great Justin Timberlake song, right? Like it's like whatever you do, you get it back. There's some truth in that, but that's not fully what it is. So karma is this cycle of impressions forming into ideas, forming into patterns in our life. So let me break down what I mean by that. When you make a choice in your life that choice has a certain reaction or a certain consequence. And that consequence is there to teach you about whether you choose to do that again. So let's use that for health. When I see a fried burger with a bunch of fries with a sugary drink right there in the evening, and I get attracted to that and I'm like, that's what I want to eat tonight. I make that choice in the moment. It feels amazing. But then the next morning, I don't feel as good. That consequence is not I got what I give out. That consequence was for me to reflect on, do you want to eat that again? Next time when you have that choice, that's what you're going to choose. And so I feel like that's what karma is trying to do. So sometimes you make a choice and we don't look at how we make choices. We focus far more on the result. So let's think about this. How many times have you ever dated someone later on to realize that they were the wrong person? But you never went back to think about how you made the decision to be with them. You were just really upset that they were the wrong person and they hurt you or whatever they did. But what if you went back and said, oh, actually, I chose to be with them because they were controlling and that made me feel safe. Oh, wait a minute, I chose to be with them because they kind of took care of everything and fixed all my problems. So I thought that they knew what they were doing. Oh, wait a minute, I chose to be with them because I was in a weak place and therefore they made me feel a sense of safety and certainty and I let them do that. Oh, now next time I make a decision to be with someone, let me make sure that I'm not basing it on that criteria. Let me actually go in as an equal. So that's what karma is trying to get you to have that reflection.
Rule number 4 is be fully immersed.
If you want a specific new life, or you have a path that seems interesting to you, you have to spend more time on that path than around the other people. And so even though I didn't spend a lot of time with the monks every year, that time was really deep in the sense that I was fully immersed. Even if I was there for a week or 2 weeks or a month, I was following the whole program. I was waking up at 4 a.m. I was having the cold showers. I was sleeping in the same way. I wasn't going there and treating it like a vacation. I was going there and doing the work. So in your case, I'm guessing that when you were writing a blog, you were writing a blog really well. You were trying to build a business really well. You were following your path with a sense of intensity. And even when you're not getting the results, or in my case, I couldn't just live as a monk for the whole year, that intensity was so strong that I'd come back really charged with all my answers and all my voices in my head saying, no, I know why I'm doing this. And so I was really certain because of my immersiveness. And I think a lot of us, we want to be certain, but we're not obsessed. And it's hard to be certain when you're not obsessed. You can't be half in, half out in your practice of something you want to be, whether it's an entrepreneur, whether it's a creator, whether it's a CEO, or whether it's even a parent. Like all of those roles are really powerful, but they're really hard to do when you're kind of half in, half out. And so for me, that was the first thing. I was fully immersed in who I wanted to be.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5 is overcome stress.
What do you do in those spiritual retreats?
Usually I like going to the eco village in Palghar, Vada, and I like just switching off. I literally won't be on my phone. I'll completely unplug. And I like to just go back to living in a meditative, monk-like way, in the way that I used to. And to be able to just wake up at 4 a.m. every day, meditate again for many hours, reflect, journal, introspect. I find that getting to do that for 2 to 3 weeks a year is such a great reset. I find that naturally because of our careers, we're always on our phones and we're always plugged in, and that's great and that's fantastic. But I think once a year, it's so powerful to just completely switch off. So I won't reply to any emails. I won't check my text messages. We will have pre-prepared our content in advance so that people are still served and the community is taken care of. But I don't have to worry about any of that.
Rule number 6 is shift your energy.
What do you think is going to be the lesson you're going to learn at the end of this year? If you could be in the future, what do you think your soul is going to tell you that is going to be the lesson and the thing for you to step into or let go of into the next year?
I think the lesson will be to, and everyone needs to do this, and it comes back to your point of season, is to live in the season that you have reached. And what I mean by that is that there was a different energy that it took to get here, and it will be a different energy to move forward. And I think it's really interesting because I think we often stay in the same energy state multiple years of our life because we got used to it or we got familiar with it. And then years go by before you realize you needed an energy shift. And I think when you see people who are burnt out, lost, or confused, or feel like they wasted time, it's because they never realized that they stayed in the same energy state that they were in when they started. And you have to accept that time has changed and life has moved on and you've learned new things and you've gained new clarity. And so I think that will be the lesson. And letting go, I think, will be, I feel like to get to this point, I had to do a lot of what I didn't love. And I think that should always get less and less and less. So I think a healthy life isn't one where you only do what you love, but it's a life where you do less and less of what you don't love. And so I feel like my life's always moving in that direction. And I think in a year from now, I have all the clarity and all the opportunity to start afresh, as opposed to continuing to just exist in the world of repeating what's been done.
Rule number 7 is use your calendar.
So this might be unpopular opinion, but I live by this and it has truly been a game changer in my world. If it's not in the calendar, it won't get done. It's not really a priority, right? You have to make sure that it's in your plan, it's in your day. So I'm gonna show you quickly what my calendar and schedule look like. That is my life this month. As you can see, it's color-coded, it's beautifully designed. And as I flick through this, what you'll realize is that every single day, I have everything from workout time to meal times to scheduled off time, all in my calendar. What this allows me to do is it helps me prioritize both personal and professional commitments and helps me see both things in the same place. If you haven't put something in your calendar, even if it's something social, I promise you'll either forget it or you won't plan effectively around it. When I know I have a really big podcast or a really big interview, or if I know that I have a big deadline on a day, I don't then surround that day with other difficult and challenging tasks. Sometimes I'll start my day with the most challenging task of the day because I feel that I need to start with a challenge. And sometimes I'll actually put it as the last most challenging task of the day because actually I want to build that momentum. When you have a schedule, you get context around how you feel. That way you manage your mental health and well-being a million times better and you do more with less time.
Rule number 8 is learn to adapt.
If there was any way to sum up, like what did you take from those 3 years? Like what was it that kind of seeped into your soul, that huge transformation that you went through, wherein you wanted to live this different life completely? What was it?
So I think there's a few things. The first one, and I'll share things that I think people can relate to or are digestible. One of them was adaptability. So you don't have a place you sleep. You sleep anywhere on the floor that's available. So you don't have a bedroom. You don't even have a section that's yours. Someone else could sleep there tomorrow and you'd have to sleep in their place. There's no space. Sometimes you get back and there's no food left. Sometimes you're out on the streets all day serving food, but you didn't get to eat. Sometimes you got a good night's sleep, sometimes you didn't. There's just so much adaptability that you learn. Sometimes you'd get somewhere thinking you had a place to stay, but then you didn't. There was just so much uncertainty in your day because you don't get to pick what you eat. There's no menu, there's no restaurant. It's not like, oh yeah, I'll eat this today. You eat what you're given. So you start developing this appetite for adaptability where whatever happens, you survive and you live and you think, oh, wow, like I can actually survive either way. And I think that stays with me today. I mean, we were just talking about with my team, like I slept 1 hour last night. But I've done that so many times and served all day that it's just normal. It's part of the adaptability training of you can keep giving and keep going even without that. Now, I wouldn't do that every day. That's only because I was on a plane. Just to give that caveat, I don't recommend people burn themselves out. That's a very specific thing to this particular time that I'm in this next couple of weeks. But the idea of adaptability was huge.
Rule number 9 is be where you can best serve.
Would you want to live as a monk again? I won't be surprised if the answer is yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would want to be wherever I can best serve. That's what I've realized.
Okay.
Be where you can best serve, because there was a time in my life where being a monk was the best way I could serve. But now if I was to go back there, maybe that wouldn't be service. Maybe that would be selfishness, because it would be so personally motivated. But actually where I am right now is where I can serve the most from. It's almost like saying, every seed grows into a tree. But if the tree says, I want to be a seed again, but the seed doesn't serve as much as a tree does. The tree gives shelter, it gives fruits, it plants so many new seeds. And I think all of us have to go through that journey of going from seeds to trees.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is experiment.
Am I right in saying then over those next few years, you're kind of leading this almost dual life where you're kind of deeply pulled into this world of kind of ancient spirituality and philosophy and religion, and it's totally different way of looking at the world and totally different expectations and definitions of happiness and success, but then also doing university and doing internship at a bank, is that right?
Yeah. So I was interning at financial companies in London in my summer, and then I'd either spend the rest of the summer or the Christmas holidays back in the ashram. So I would literally go from wearing suits, going to bars, eating at steakhouses, doing the corporate networking thing, trying to make sure I land a job after I graduate, and then shifting to sleeping on the floor, wearing robes, waking up at 4 a.m. and meditating all day. And I've always described that as like my first A/B test or split test, right? Like that everyone does now. And that split test just led me to I felt fulfilled every time I came back from the monastery. I was just like, I just had this amazing experience. I'd have so many stories to tell. I'd have so many interesting things that happened to me. And when I was in the work world, I was just trying to impress the person at the top. I was doing whatever it took to make sure that I stood out. I was, there was always a bit of like uncertainty because you don't know whether the people there are competing with you or they're your colleagues. Like it's this awkward environment. And I didn't feel fulfilled. And so for me, it was a very natural process of elimination of going, well, how do I feel? And I think that's one of the reasons why I recommend that everyone experiments so much. And you don't have to go and spend a couple of weeks in an ashram in India, but if you can experiment on a potential passion over the weekend, or a potential hobby over a 3-day retreat, or something that you find interesting over an online course, like there are just so many resources out there that help you experiment without much cost, not just financially, but in time and energy. And when you do that, you get the sense of whether something works or not. So if I'd never worked in a financial company, I would never have known whether that was good or bad. And if I'd never gone to the monastery, I would never have known. I can only think so much in my head. And I think so much of us today, we're trying to figure things out in our mind. Like we think, oh yeah, I can just mentally figure out what my passion is or what I should do or how I should live my life. And I actually don't think you can, because you only know through the lived experience.
I think that a lot of people are looking for peace. What do you say to those people who are just in search of peace?
I'm glad you asked this. So the tagline of my book is called Train Your Mind for Peace and Purpose Every Day.
Wow.
I believe that it's something that can be trained, and I believe it's something that you have to take responsibility for. The world around you is never going to be fully peaceful, ever. Even if there was world peace, you would still not have peace with a little argument with your partner or a little issue at work. Like that's never going to disappear. So the desire for everything around you to be calmed is a wishful thought that doesn't have an end. Whereas the feeling of wanting to create calm and peace within is very realistic. And the point is that that peace is always going to get triggered. And I think that's the mistake we make. We're looking for this perfect, consistent, never touched definition of peace. Whereas peace is something you're constantly training yourself to look for. So what I would say is that people should try and find the one activity they have in their day that brings them peace. It could be sitting and having their morning tea. It could be sitting and reading from a book they love. It could be having a beautiful conversation with their partner, whatever it is. Just have one activity a day that brings you peace. In my book, obviously, I talk about a lot more than that, but to find just something that brings you peace. It could be a mindset that brings you peace. So I really believe that all stress, pressure, or lack of peace comes from your mind being ahead of your body or your body being ahead of your mind. So how many times have you been in a scenario where your mind's like racing really, really fast and your body's like, oh, I just want to be in bed.
Right.
Right? Everyone been in that situation?
Yeah.
Or you're in the opposite scenario where your body is moving really, really fast, doing a lot, but your mind's like, oh, I'm still want to be in bed.
Oh, that was me yesterday.
Right. So we've all experienced both. You
get into all this in your book, don't you?
Yes.
Oh, I can't wait to read it.
So the alignment of the two is what creates peace. Let's imagine I was running late today and I'm stressing. I'm like, I haven't thought about this and I don't know what it's about. And maybe I'm, all that stuff that we know that you'd be stressed about when you're running to work. And I'm sitting in the back of a Lyft or an Uber, or I'm driving and I turn up to the meeting.
Because you live in LA and you can drive.
Correct. So what I would do is I sit down and I breathe in for the same count that I breathe out.
Oh, yeah.
So I breathe in for a count of 4.
In through the nose, out
through the nose, out through the mouth. And I breathe out for a count of 4. Now, when you breathe in for the same amount of time as you breathe out, you're aligning your body and mind. Why? Because your mind is counting 1, 2, 3, 4. And your body in unison is breathing in and out 1, 2, 3, 4. Albert Einstein famously remarked in a conversation with Werner Heisenberg, he said, in the West, we've built a beautiful ship and in it has all the comforts. But actually the one thing that it doesn't have is a compass, and that's why it doesn't know where it's going. This paradox of our times was propounded by the Dalai Lama when he said we have wider freeways but narrower viewpoints. We have taller buildings but shorter tempers. Will Smith said that we spend money we haven't earned on things we don't need to impress people we don't like. And it's phenomenal how the same technology that brings us close to those who are far away takes us far away from the people that are actually close. 30 billion WhatsApp messages are sent per day, but 48% of people say that they feel lonelier in general. The paradox of our times is that we have more degrees but less sense, more knowledge but less judgment, more experts but less solutions. It was Martin Luther King who said that the irony of our times is that we have guided missiles but misguided men. Have you ever found it perplexing that we've been all the way to the moon and back, but we struggle to start a conversation across the road or across the train? And it's amazing that Bill Gates was known as the top earner in 2015 with a wealth of 79.2 billion, but 1 in 4 CEOs claim to be struggling from depression. Do we actually thrive off this paradox? Is it that this paradox actually makes the media interesting? It's what makes journalism interesting. It's what makes politics interesting. It's what makes television interesting. Is this paradox actually what we feed off and what we live off and what we talk about and discuss in our circles? Doesn't it seem that we've tried to clean the air but polluted our soul? We've split the atom but not our prejudice, and we're aiming for higher incomes but we have lower morals. So I'm hearing you ask, how do we bring a change? How do we dissect this paradox that exists in our lives? And it starts by us, each of us, pressing pause, pressing reset, and then pressing play again, taking a moment to become more conscious, taking a moment to become more aware, taking a moment to really reflect on the consequence, the implications of a misplaced word, of an unnecessary argument that we all know we didn't need to have, or to speak to someone just slightly differently, in a different tone, in a different voice, in a different empathy, with a different perspective, just to really connect with people on a different level. This thinking out loud started from Albert Einstein, and I'll track back to him when he actually said that the problems we have today can't be solved with the same thinking we used when we once created them. So actually we need to research alternative teachings. We need to deep down dig into those ancient books of wisdom. We need to go back to understanding if there's anything written in those creased pages of time that can actually reveal more knowledge and more wisdom of how we can transform our experience of life today. Otherwise, this paradox means that every step forward we take, we're taking 3 backwards every time. I think kindness spreads faster, and kindness is easy to experience, and it actually has impact on how you feel.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've seen, which is so beautiful, is that when people are sharing my videos on Facebook, it's like they feel that they're getting to spread kindness. They're not spreading it because it's smart, they're not spreading it because it's provocative, they're spreading it because they feel that if they spread it with their community, they're also part of spreading kindness. And I think that's what I love about it, that kindness doesn't have any languages, it doesn't have any barriers, like it's beyond all of that. Kindness is a language we can all speak. So this is a quote from Nelson Mandela where he said, no one is born hating another person. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. When we're children, we naturally are caring, compassionate, and kind. I actually saw this really good video on social media of a child watching a cartoon, and the cartoon character started to cry. And so the little girl, she crawled up to the screen and she took a napkin and she started to wipe the tear. And like, that's how we are as children. And then we're wired for generosity, but then we're educated for greed.
Yeah.
So our life becomes around getting and success and achievement and like getting it, doing whatever it takes. And that's where kindness gets removed.
Yeah.
So the only way to bring that kindness into children's lives is through encouraging things like sharing and collaboration.
Yeah.
You know, encouraging things like not ownership of a toy or an aspect, but recognizing that things are connected. What do you do when you think about your weekend and you realize actually you've got more time than you expected? How do you fill space? When you know you're traveling, you're commuting, how are you filling that space? Notice that there's actually more gaps in space in our lives than we actually believe exist. And for that reason, I'd love for you to just tell me right in the comment section, when you see space, what do you fill it with? What do you put into that gap, right? How do you make the most of it? The reason why I wanted to talk to you about space was I remember a story from when I lived as a monk. And it was about a student who came up to his guru. And the student came up to the guru and said to him, he started just rambling on about his successes, what he'd been achieving, how well things were going, how much he was just progressing. But he was doing it in slight arrogance. There was a slight bit of overconfidence in the air of the way he was presenting himself. So to show him a lesson or to explain something to him, the guru, remember yesterday we talked about two types of people who believe in you, change spotters and cheerleaders. We need both of them in our lives. We need people who motivate us, but we also need people who remind us and make us reflect of what really matters, what's really important. So what he did is that he poured the tea. Of course it was green tea, it had to be, right? It can't be any other type of tea if there was a guru. He poured the green tea, and as he started to pour it into the cup got filled to the rim. And then he just carried on pouring it. So the cup was just overflowing. The tea was now spilling onto the table. And the student said, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? You know, you can't fill something that's already full. And the teacher said, exactly. You can't feel something that's already full. You already feel that you know everything. You already feel that you've got everything taken care of. You already feel that you're full to the rim. You can't add anything to that. And therefore space is such a underestimated, undervalued period that we all need in our day. We all need in our week, we all need in our year. Now, the amazing thing is that statistics show that so many people don't even take their holidays from work, right? There's leftover days, and these aren't days that you can carry forward. These are days just lost because we're so busy, right? It's incredible to believe that we're getting paid to take holiday, yet we don't take it. Now, how many of you have ever done that? How many of you have forgotten to take holiday or not been able to do it? Whichever one it is, it's interesting that we feel so full. When you're asked what you're doing, I know so many people, like I was asking someone the other day, I asked them, what are you doing? It's your birthday weekend, or it's your birthday, or it's your anniversary, or it's just the weekend. It's not even like a special weekend, it's just the weekend. And you ask someone, what are you doing this weekend? How many of us feel pressurized to have to say we are doing something, and how many of us feel honest and comfortable in just saying, you know what, I haven't got any plans, I'm just gonna take some time out. And I find that I see both, so we see both types of people. We see some people who feel pressurized to have to say that they've got something cool going on, or they've got something interesting to go to. And at the same time, we have individuals who'll just be like, yeah, you know what, I'm quite comfortable. But it's that creating that comfort, I still feel that pressure or that tension in people's behavior and expression where they feel slight discomfort, slight bit of anxiety in saying, I haven't got any plans, you know, I haven't got anything to do. It almost feels that we've created a taboo around not having something to do, right? We've created a taboo about the way we feel about not having something planned, about having space. We don't necessarily say, I'm so glad I have nothing to do. Sometimes we may say that. No, I do it all the time. Just before you send an email, just after you sent an email, just taking that moment between activities. Once you stop doing an activity, just take some time to breathe. Before you start another activity, take some time to breathe. Giving yourself space to breathe does something amazing. One of the reasons why we feel we don't have space in our lives is that our mind's moving faster than our bodies. How many of you have ever felt it? And press the like button if this is you, that your mind is just moving at an incredibly fast pace, but your body feels tired. How many of you have ever felt that way? And how many of you have felt the opposite? Your body's moving really fast, you're doing lots of things, but your mind's feeling really tired and you just feel drained and you can't think. That's because we're experiencing what happens when there's a disconnect or a lack of harmony between the pace of the mind and the pace of the body. Breathing and focusing on your breath allows you to realign both your mind and your body so that they're working together now. You're not having that friction that you experience with one trying to be ahead of the other. We all express anger differently. And therefore, usually our understanding of anger, or when we feel other people are angry, is when they behave as we do when we're angry. We almost assume that that's how people express anger. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is that there are 6 key anger types or anger styles, right? It's almost like a personality type, but there are anger styles. And each of them have a unique internal dialogue, a unique internal conversation that you'll have with yourself. And they all have their own consequential damage that they cause in our relationships and damage to ourselves. And finally, methods to turn it around. They're all different. You can't apply the same message. Now, how many of you have ever heard advice to your life as being calm down, right? Just calm down, right? And in my opinion, never in the history of being told to calm down has anyone ever calmed down, right? That's just never happened. No one does that. No one calms down when you tell them to. Some people may do. So notice that even the antidote or the cure to anger is different for different people. Hence, when you want someone to just switch off and snap out of it, they can't, even if you do. Hence, when you tell people to count to 10 or count back from 100, they can't do it because they don't function like that. We all function differently with anger. Hence, even if you're advising, even if you're guiding people, the first thing we have to acknowledge is that everyone experiences and expresses anger differently. Let's start with anger style number 1. Anger style number 1 is what I like to call explosive, right? It sounds like a good song, but it's not. Explosive. It may take a lot to push you over the edge. So it takes you time to be pushed over the edge, but when you get there, the earth shakes and people run for cover, right? You know who you are if you know I'm talking about you. Now, why do we do that? I've always been interested, since I studied behavioral science, I've always been interested in why we do what we do. So a question I asked yesterday was, what did I study at university? I studied behavioral science as a focus topic. So why do we do what we do? The truth is, the reason why, for those who have an explosive anger style, the reason why we do that is we've never been taught to properly deal with irritation. So we talk a lot today in this world about tolerance. And tolerance almost feels like you're trying to squash all your anger into a box constantly. Like you're trying to get this and squeeze it in and you can't quite shut it. If you travel a lot like me, it's like trying to shut a suitcase and the suitcase just won't fit and you're trying to pull the zip around and you're trying to squash the zip together so that you can pull it through, but it doesn't quite work. When we're not taught to be tolerant in the right way, when we're not taught to deal with regular irritation, what happens is that we absorb or swallow pain or anger as much as we can until we can't anymore. This is the most common form of anger. We're constantly trying to suppress, we're constantly trying to squeeze, constantly trying to push it away, but at one point it all has to come out and it explodes, erupts like a volcano, hence the term explosive. So whether you are type 1 or you experience type 1, here's what happened. The result is that you over-amplify the issue that you argue about because you've boxed it in for so long. You've kept in all these little irritations. So tolerance is not about just keeping in irritation. Tolerance is about acceptance and letting it go. But the problem today is our tolerance, our version of tolerance, is almost just capturing and keeping hold and absorbing and swallowing all of this until we have to take it out. So the way to do this, now how to turn this around. The amazing thing is when you look at neuroscience, right, and this is what I love, I'm trying to share with you evidence-backed science, things that are propelled by how science talks to them, and I hope you're going to press share right now so that we can get lots more people thinking about anger. The neurological anger response, believe it or not, lasts no more than 2 seconds, right? When you experience anger, in terms of neurology, in terms of your brain, it's only a chemical release of 2 seconds, right? So it actually takes more. Now, if you knew that, well done to you. And if you didn't know that, I mean, tell me, I mean, that shocked me. When I read that statistic, I was like, wow. Neurologically, we only experience anger for 2 seconds, which means it takes commitment to carry on being angry. How many of you have ever felt angry for 2 or 3 seconds, but felt, actually, you know what, I'm gonna play on this for a bit longer so that the person realizes how angry I am? How many of you have almost acted anger, right? We all become method actors where we pretend to be angry or amplify our anger just so that people realize how angry we are. So it takes commitment to stay angry. Meditation is awesome, deep breathing is awesome, taking moments. Now, but the one thing I wanted to talk about, how to really deal with explosive anger at the root. Explosive anger comes because we're constantly suppressing little things that annoy us because we think that we can just let them go. And we think that if we bring up these little things, someone's gonna get really annoyed at us. How many of you worry that if you brought up these little things that are annoying you, it will really annoy your partner or your colleague or whatever it is? So one of the best ways to do this is actually to write it down. When we write things down, we have to articulate things better. If you imagine, if you had to send a tweet, 140 characters, the amount of energy that goes into articulating 140 characters takes much more effort than articulating 1,400 words. So what I'd like you to do is when you're feeling that moments of tolerance being tested or there's agitation or that frustration, it's writing it down and articulating it in 140 characters about how you actually feel. And then kind of analyzing that statement and trying to get all of your feelings out on paper where you're almost reconciling how you feel without having to share it with that person.
What's next in terms of self-actualization and ultimately self-transcendence?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So first of all, I don't think any social media can give us self-actualization. I wish it could. That'd be so cool if you could take a pill or watch a video or whatever it may be and that it just gave you that moment. It would be amazing. But I think what's next is we have come to a place where I think people are looking for alternatives, that people have become dissatisfied with the norm. It's why social media videos around the positive elements are growing, because all of us are seeking, and I think that's awesome. And I think the biggest thing we have to do is I think everyone has to sit down and just seek a step further and just go, okay, I found this piece of content online that inspired me, that moved me. What do I do now about it in my real life? And those are the 3 C's of growth, right? You need a coach. If you want to get good at everything, you have to have a coach. There is no one who's got good at anything without having a coach, whether it was conscious or subconscious, right? Whether you knew it or you didn't know it. The second thing is it needs to be consistent. It's not good enough to hear someone once at a conference. It's not good enough to meet someone once a month. You need that consistency. We shower every day, we eat every day, right? You have to do both to stay alive, so you need to refuel and renew your mind every single day. It needs to be consistent. And the third thing is it needs community. Right, if you're growing without community, it's not sustainable. All of us need friends that want the same thing. All of us need friends to discuss things with, to grow with, to hear the same ideas back, to reflect with. There's 2 types of content creators. One is the sellout, and one is the selfish. So a selfish creator only creates videos for themselves. You know when you make a video and I'm like, I would so watch this, right? And it's like, yes, you're the only person that would so watch that. And I've made some of those videos too, where you just think you're so smart and you look so cool. But that's selfish creator. You make stuff that only you understand, right? No one else would get it. A lot of PhDs or scientists end up making this mistake where they talk on a plane where most of us have no idea what they're talking about. And then you have the sellout content creator. The sellout only makes for the audience. The sellout goes, oh, what's trending this week? Let me make a video about this. Oh, that buzzword, or I'm gonna chuck it in there. And that doesn't work either, because that's hard to refuel. It's hard to feel meaningful. So the truth is the marriage between the two. You want to listen to people to find out what their challenges are, but you want to draw from whatever you're learning to serve that challenge. Social media was my last resort to try and share a message that I deeply believed the world needed. And so if I had it my way, I would never have taken to social media. I would have done it through one of these official channels that wouldn't give me a chance. And I think people don't think that. People think, oh yeah, you joined social media because you want to get a phone. It's like, I joined social media because I didn't know any other way to spread the message. So going back to mistakes on social media or failures, I've fallen into it so many times, and I fall into it on a daily basis. If your life revolves around serving through social media, you have to become phenomenal at social media strategy. You can't separate the two. You have to. The problem is when the strategy overtakes the sincerity. The problem is when the strategy overtakes the creativity or overshadows the creativity. The problem is when the strategy just becomes a game and now you're just living in this fake world you've created. Yeah. And that's the problem. When you just look at the likes and you don't look at the comments, when you look at the views, but you don't look at the engagement. And when I say engagement, I mean the depth of it. What are people saying? How are they feeling? That's what humanizes it again for me. So that's what I'm holding on to, is the humanizing of it, of seeing like, how is this genuinely having a human impact, not a data impact? And I think that's where our mindset as strategists versus spiritualists goes, is as a strategist, you're meant to think data, but as a spiritualist, you're meant to think depth. And so you can't let data overshadow depth. And what I love about algorithms is that they always keep you humble. You will never beat the algorithm. It will always keep you humble. So if you're actually doing it for likes and love and hearts, you will give up. But if you're doing it because you just want to find what is going to connect with people, what is going to resonate, what is going to cut through, then that's something that will keep you humble in the process of it, because you'll never win.
Imagine you said the first thing that you write has to be in Hollywood. The first song that you write has to be at the top of the Billboard charts. That's the problem, that we have these over-amplified views. Now that goal is not bad, but feeling like that's gonna be your first break, that doesn't make any sense. So often when you're working for that, you keep failing. It doesn't work because you just can't get through to that person. And you think, oh my God, my idea is never gonna be famous. But the funny thing is that you've got all these other ways of writing. Work your way up. It's okay. People quit all the time, right? Winners quit all the time. They quit at the right stuff. I remember for the last few years, a lot of people were telling me to get into politics, and I used to just laugh at this because it's just not my space. It's not a passion that I have. And so if I had ever tried to make it into politics, I potentially could have failed and I would have lost drive. But what I've been working on, what I'm doing right now, I've been working on it for about 10 years and I've never lost drive and motivation. It could be that you're losing motivation for something that you don't care about. Analyze and assess whether the reason for losing motivation is that you don't care or that you're just getting lazy or complacent. Figure that out first. Some of the best strategic thinkers, they see patterns. I was speaking to someone earlier last week, and it was really funny because I was thinking about, in the past, our previous generations were struggling to earn money, they were struggling to get by, they were trying to think of new ideas, they were, immigrants, they were moving around the world, so many challenges. And I was speaking to someone, they're just like, I can't get to 1,000 followers on Instagram. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, literally, like, that's what we're worrying about, right? We're worrying about how to get 1,000 followers, 1,000 Instagram likes, all this kind of stuff. When generations before us were worrying about stuff that was much more huge. So one of the things we need to really connect with and recognize is our work actually adding value? Are we actually trying to add value to people, or are we just looking at the result? One of the biggest challenges of strategy is that we get so fixated on having a certain outcome that we look at our process and we don't even know what's going wrong. We're going, why are no one watching my videos? Why is no one liking my posts? Why is no one buying my product? Well, is your product made for the people? Are you really trying to serve? Are you really trying to create something that people are going to value? Or are you actually trying to create what you feel like creating? So it's finding your passion, but your passion turns into a purpose when you use it to serve others. And that's the key. Your passion's great on its own, but if you don't use it to make a difference in the lives of other people, it will always be undervalued. And the biggest part of strategy is surround yourself by people who've built that strategy, who made that successful, learn from them, understand it, and design your strategy. The first thing is premeditation, right? Strategy represents planning, carried out in advance. Don't just wing it, right? I said in my social media post for this, hope is not a strategy. Winging it is not a strategy. Right? It's not going to help you learn. It's not going to help you grow. Figuring out how your competitors act is a great way of doing it. But as Simon Sinek said when he was on my show a month or so ago, he was talking about how when he went to a Microsoft conference, they were talking about their competitors. When he went to an Apple conference, they were talking about the future. If you're talking about future trends, you're already ahead, right? Take some time, get some analysis and ideas. Remember, look for good counsel. But make sure your counsel is strategic counsel, people who know what they're talking about.
I believe that humanity needs a shift in terms of priority, belief systems, values. If we want people to live happy, fulfilling, meaningful lives, purposeful lives, and those to me are my definition of happiness and success is, am I living with purpose? Am I living with meaning? And do I feel fulfilled? And I think that the biggest way to shift that is through the culture that we're most absorbed in, and that's entertainment culture. I believe that the way we're going to shift the majority of mindsets in the world are through entertainment. The most successful people in the world, the most healthy, wealthy, and wise people in the world choose education over entertainment. And the most unsuccessful people in the world, healthy, unhealthy, unwealthy, or unwise, are choosing entertainment over education. And I made it my mission in life as to how do we use entertainment as a vehicle for education. How can we start with entertainment first, but let it have a heart of education that can really uplift lives? Because I don't think we're going to take everyone away from their television screens or their digital streaming services towards courses, books, and all of this incredible stuff that some of us are involved in.
How do you work through judgment?
So I think this goes back to the monk training. We were one of the biggest mantras we were trained in as monks was don't judge the moment. And we would literally repeat that to ourselves time and time and time and time again. And you'll be shocked to understand, if you keep repeating that to yourself, that thing annoys the hell out of you because it stops you from judging. But literally, the first thing that comes to my mind when something doesn't go the way I planned for it to go is don't judge the moment. And it's a simple mantra. It's been life-changing for me because so many times we're so quick to label a situation. Like we label a situation as good or bad instantly. If we get some good news, we immediately think, this is amazing. And then that same amazing news in a few months can end up being the worst thing that happened to you. Or it's the other way around, where you label a situation as bad, and a few months later, that's the best thing that happened to you. Happiness is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. Because when you're by yourself, you've got no one to validate you anymore. And so when we walk out of the house, we're always like, do I look good in this to someone else? Ask yourself, do I look good in this? Because you can end up wearing something that you didn't like because someone else liked it, and then at the end of the night, you're like, oh, I wish you didn't tell me to wear that. And imagine you wore that mask for your whole life. Imagine you wore that career for your whole life. Imagine you wore that purpose for your whole life. And at the end of your life, you look back and go, wow, I just did all of that because 10 people thought it was amazing. Making sure, I think people think of this time when they're single as like taking care of themselves and finding themselves again. But a big part of that is actually learning to value your worth and your power and who you are and how much you really have to offer in a relationship and how you already have that. So it's not like a relationship is going to help you understand whether you have enough to give or not. You already know what you have to give because you've spent this 1.5 years being satisfied, being by yourself, being strong on your own. And so now when you walk into a relationship, it's knowing your worth and knowing that you already have value to bring because you've done the work. Now, in a relationship, I think what we often forget is as well, and it's interesting you use that language because in any relationship, we're either the parent, the child, or a partner. And so when we start behaving like a parent, we inform our partners to behave like a child. And often that's what ends up happening is that as we try and play this parental role, they start acting more and more like children. And therefore we have to parent more and more and more. And then we overcompensate with overparenting. And the opposite is also true. If we act like a child, then our partner starts to act like a parent. And they feel overwhelmed and drained and burdened by having to run around us. And so the only way to try and really create a healthy relationship is to set a standard of being partners. And partners means we help each other out with our strengths, like their strengths help out our weaknesses, our strengths help out their weaknesses, but then we also help them build systems of support. We help them build what they need and not make us their need. And that's the challenge I think that we fall into is we think, well, we need to be useful and needed for everything. And actually the greatest gift you can do is help them set up what they need and then focus on your needs at the same time. So if you're needed for every single thing in their day and their life, then you'll never get the time for yourself. And the only way you'll make time for yourself is if you set them up, but you also realize they're a partner in this, you're equals in this. Like They're going to have to find their own growth. They're going to have to figure things out for themselves.
Why we are not grateful, like why we stop ourselves, what are the barriers or blocks for us from being grateful, why we should be grateful, what are the real benefits? And finally, I want to specifically talk to you about keeping a gratitude journal, a practice that I kept up for many, many years. This is almost a lesson to myself so that I can go back to doing it. But this is something I did for consecutive years, can't remember, long period of time. And it's something that I still do mentally, but I still believe that writing it down is the most amazing thing. So let's talk about this. Why is it that we struggle to be grateful? In the comment section, let me know. Why do you feel sometimes in life you struggle to be grateful? So some of the most common answers include that we believe it's difficult and a bit useless. People go, oh, that's too difficult to have to think about what I'm grateful for every day. And what's the point of it anyway? Like no one notices, no one cares. That's not true, but we'll get to that, right? That's one reason. The second reason is it requires too much effort, right? It requires us to actually sit there and figure it out and think it through. So it requires too much effort. And the third one is, and this is the one that I think we really need to connect to, is that we genuinely underestimate the power of gratitude in our daily lives. We actually underestimate it. Now, I posted a speech. I was doing a speech series on Facebook. If you don't already follow me, I'm at JShettyIW on Facebook. Come and find me. And I posted a video series called Speechless, where I'm posting some of my favorite speeches by celebrities. And I posted this one video by Matthew McConaughey. The video's now got like 35 million views. And in that, he says this phenomenal statement, and he says that it's a scientific fact that gratitude reciprocates, right? It's a scientific fact that gratitude reciprocates. And if you really unravel that, and that's what we're going to be doing today, we really underestimate the power that gratitude can actually have in our lives. Alvina says, we don't see the simple things in life to be grateful. Alvina, that's exactly what Oprah said. Oprah was saying that in the change from 1996 to like 2012 in her career, she was making more money, her business was progressing, she started up her own TV network, all of this great stuff was happening. But she felt that she was losing sight of the little things in her life. That's why she started keeping a gratitude journal. Some of the most successful people we look at today keep gratitude journals. Another reason why we struggle with gratitude is because we've surrounded ourselves with people who complain. And sometimes we are those people who complain, right? If you're not nodding, it's you. We complain. And we're surrounded by people who complain. So we complain so much that all we see is challenges and negatives. See, when you focus on problems, all you get is more problems. And when you focus on possibilities, what you create is more opportunities. And that's true because it's all a matter of focus, right? Whatever you focus on is what you amplify. And we're doing that every single day with our thoughts. We're doing that every single day with what we share with our friends. So being around complainers is something to watch out for. And that's something sometimes we can't get out of. That's where we've got to find this space to keep our own gratitude, a gratitude space, a gratitude journal. Next one, happiness dependent on external factors. When we start keeping a gratitude journal, we start becoming grateful for things we observe rather than things we expect. Right? When we expect things, that stops us from being grateful because usually people aren't living their day so that they can live up to our expectations. They're living their day so that they can live up to their expectations. And when our expectations aren't met, we feel ungrateful because we feel that someone or something is not living up to our standards. And that's why having happiness based on anything external is a recipe for disaster because we'll always be let down. Whenever we want something outside to make us feel good, we'll always feel limited and ungrateful. And now the third one is that we have this do more, have more, be more syndrome, which is great. Ambition is great. But part of that is being grateful for the fact that you can even have ambition, right? Being grateful for what's already been given to you. When you're moving forward at a great pace and you're achieving things you never thought you would, you've got to take a moment to be grateful for what you've been given because that's giving you the opportunity to build. Peace, love, energy, divine, 100%. If we do not appreciate what we presently have, we will never appreciate more. That's so true. And this quote I put out, if you're grateful for what you have, you'll be given more to be grateful for. One of the biggest challenges we have with gratitude is we postpone it. We say, when I get £1 million, I'll feel grateful. When I have all my family in one place, I'll feel grateful. When I have this, I'll feel grateful. We postpone, delay, push back, right? We make a scenario, an ideal scenario that we expect, that we want, that will make us feel grateful. But recognize this. The point we're making is that whatever we have is not enough, and we're looking for something else to feel that. Whereas, scientifically, if we feel grateful for anything we have, then we'll feel grateful. So if you're grateful for $1, you're grateful for $100, you're grateful for $1,000, you're grateful for $10,000, you're grateful for $100,000, you'll be grateful for $1 million. It doesn't work that you'll only be grateful for $1 million, because when you have the $1 million, you want $1 billion, right? There's a different mindset. That gratitude mindset is the one that you want to tune into. So start tuning out of postponing gratitude and start tuning in to feeling gratitude in the moment you're in right now. Knowing how to differentiate the voices in your head is the first level of self-awareness.
So break down what system 1 and system 2 are.
Absolutely. So system 1 is your initial response to anything that happens. It's a stop that I can't really say. So if you say something I don't like, my system 1 naturally would be a face that I pull that I'm like, I don't agree with that. That's an understanding of what system 1 is. It's your initial default reaction in the moment. That can be positive often. For example, if someone pulls out a knife, you feel scared and you run. That's system 1. That's a good thing. It's safe for you. But also system 1 is someone says something that hurts your ego and you start defending yourself immediately. That's a negative of system 1. That we would refer to as the mind. It's built up of conditioning. Those responses are conditioned. Those default elements are all there because of habit and continuous practice. The system 2 is more like the intelligence. What I would say is more like the parent. If you can consider system 1 to be more like a child, system 2 is more like a parent. It looks more at the long term. It looks more at the bigger picture. It processes that default reaction through a set of checking and metrics to decide whether that's true. The child is the one that wants everything right away, impatient, quickly responding, straight away reacting when it doesn't get what it wants. The intelligent parent, a good one, knows what the child wants and needs and what's better for it in the long term. Just starting there and being able to reflect and observe the different voices inside of us is a great place to start your self-awareness. Because the biggest challenge is that most of us don't know what we're listening to. And most of us don't even know that there are more than one voice inside of us. Just getting over that line is a huge win, because now at least you're trying to differentiate between what you're hearing, and that's going to help you make better decisions in the future. I could live with purpose and happiness. So let's go back to the start. I told you you had to choose between following your passion or finding real success, between putting yourself first or hustling, between finding a purpose or achieving happiness. I couldn't choose just one, so I chose all of them. Success is the hustle of finding your purpose through your passion and to never sleep on your happiness. Now, I've tried other people's version of success and it doesn't work. Discovering my passion opened up a world of purpose where hustling was not sacrificing my well-being, but instead unveiling a world of happiness. That's the success I chose. Now, what will you decide? Fun fact about me, I'd said that I lived as a monk and I meditated and that I used to teach meditation. And at the time, Accenture was taking, and they are taking mental health very seriously. And so she reached out to me and she said, Jay, we have this big event coming up at Twickenham Rugby Stadium. Would you mind talking about social media, which is what I was doing at work, and talk about mindfulness and meditation on stage and potentially even lead a meditation? Now, at the time, I had no brand, no social media, no one knew my name. I was asked to come onto stage in between Will Greenwood, who was a Rugby World Cup winner with the England national team, and the CEO of the company in the UK. So I'm already having massive imposter syndrome because I'm going, this guy won a World Cup for the country, this person's the CEO of the company, like, what am I gonna say? And these are 1,000 people who are my peers who have no respect for me, and there's no authority here. And that is a beautiful position to be in, because you start realizing that you're not living off of influence, so you're not living off of a position, you live off of who you are and how you hold yourself. And so I went up on stage, I was nervous till the point I went on, and I led a meditation, and the feedback I got was,
they'd never seen a group of 1,000 people hold silence for that long. And it was a really like reassuring, comforting feeling. Like it wasn't like, yes, we did it. It was more like, wow, this stuff works in the real world. People care. And so, yes, then I got invited across the company to teach mindfulness and meditation, set up mindfulness Mondays, mindfulness meditations before meetings. I got really involved I was so grateful to Accenture for championing a personal skill set in a big professional organization with 500,000 people.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Sadhguru, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
This unwinding business has become very popular. Everybody's talking about unwinding, detoxing and whatever. First of all, why are you so toxic? And then you want to detox yourself. You are eating wrong, you're thinking wrong,